Hey folks, welcome back to the Land Fixer podcast. I am your host, as usual, Logan Swanson. Today we have the one, the only Seth Drehle-Ewan. Welcome back to the show. Glad to have you.
Good to be here.
Cool, cool. Folks, remember, if you need funding for your land flips, your land development projects, your land entitlement projects, whatever it might be, check out www.landpartnerfunding.com. We love working with land investors. We don't do anything vertical, so don't bring me any damn houses, okay? Or churches. Someone brought me a church recently. Brian, I'm looking at you. Yes, and if you need to reach out to me, you want a JV on a deal, maybe you own land and you want to subdivide it with me, you can reach out to me at thelandfixer@gmail.com. And that's it. Seth, thank you for being here. We talked about any number of things we could review today. And I think we kind of decided on maybe taking one or two of your projects and just deep diving them. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds fantastic.
Awesome. So, I guess let's start first. You're very different from a lot of land investors who are spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in acquisitions marketing. What are you typically doing to go find a deal these days?
Yeah, so these days we spend a lot of our time working with realtors and brokers and just looking at online, properties anywhere from land.com, land search, land flip, realtor, and Zillow.com, and just sorting through the hundreds of thousands of properties out there, using myself, my brother, as well as our team to just find the projects that we're looking to go after and literally cherry pick properties. And while there is some cost to that, like there is some marketing cost in terms of, our team and our time, it is literally zero because we're already paying for that time to do other things. So instead of spending money on mail or texting or cold calling or these other things, which we still do from time to time, we paid literally zero for the marketing costs to find these. We don't pay anything for that marketing cost in terms of, realtor fees either, because, even with the NAR settlement changes that happened last August, I haven't seen any changes in terms of buyers paying any commissions. So it's literally the sellers still paying the commissions. A lot of people got nervous about that, and yeah, I was kind of like, well, if it changes, we got to pay 3%, 2.5% on the front end. I'm like, okay, well, it just changes the dynamic a little bit, but that hasn't happened. And I don't foresee it happening either, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's kind
So,
of bizarre. Everybody thought there'd be this giant upset, and I've noticed no difference at all.
yeah, exactly. So I still keep my thumb on it. I still ask our go-to realtors, and I, ask our uncle, he's a realtor with Remax, and I'm like, has anything changed? And it's like, no, nothing's changed. And, we're quite frankly, we're in a seller's or in a buyer's market right now. And so maybe that would switch if we went to a seller's market, but I don't really see that happening because my biggest thing is right now, people forget land for a second. The average person can't buy a home.
Yeah.
So if you're throwing in down payment costs, you're throwing in closing costs, and then now you throw in commissions, like that's just one more impediment to getting someone to buy. So, getting a seller to get over their high horse of like, I'm not going to pay their commission. Like, do you want the sale or do you want to not, move the needle at all in this home sale? Like, so it's the same thing with land. It's like, do you want to move the land or do you just want to sit on your high horse until someone pays their realtor? It's never going to happen, in my opinion. So, whole lot of hullabaloo for nothing in terms of this NAR settlement. And I think that this is the funnier part. If you actually know realtors and you talk with them intimately about the NAR settlement, the National Association of Realtors has a budget for paying out this settlement. The thing is the way that the settlement was made, it looks like it's going to be paid out over years or even potentially a decade. And they're sitting on so much cash. Like it's like think of like Warren Buffett with all of his cash. NAR is
Yeah.
not that much cash, but they have more than enough cash in the billions to literally pay out the settlement with interest from the current interest rates just on cash sitting idle.
So why would
So
they do it?
why would they do it? So, I mean, it's just one of those things. It's really interesting when you talk with realtors. They don't really talk about these things, but I'm like, they got more than enough. And the payment you're going to get when it does finally go out is going to be like $50, $25. I mean, it's nominal. So,
Yeah. So
anyway.
on your in your acquisition style, it always sounds simple, right? Everybody's like, yeah, you just look around on market and you'll stumble into something. Now, what is funny is you are not the only investor that I've spoken with that is doing this more and more. Actually, a lot of the ones that I find who have more capital to deploy or they're looking to do higher volume, say, you get to a point where after you've done like 1 million in transactions or 2 million in transactions in a year, where you're like, okay, well, I have to scale. I'm fine taking a little less money, but now I've understood the mechanics of leveraging capital, acquiring capital. You start to figure the puzzle out, and you're like, okay, well, I can just do this more and more. And then you go back to the beginning, where it's like, well, the hole in the boat here is acquisitions. So if I can go find stuff on market, I'm willing to pay a little more. So it's funny, you're actually in a ring of folks that I believe are very wise, where you're just looking on market. But that being said, there is a lot of best practices that I'm sure I can flesh out from you here. One, you're not typically just looking for a flip, right? I mean, these are usually value add projects that you're looking for. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you find a flip on market, that's a diamond in a needle haystack sort of situation. So yeah, just value add. We're looking at minor and exempt subdivides. You could do major subdivides on anything you find if it worked out numbers wise, but we're looking at minor and exempts primarily.
And what markets are you? I know you live in Colorado. Is that where you operate?
No, we don't operate in Colorado. We operate down in the southeast. Below the Mason-Dixon line, Tennessee and south is primarily where we operate our lane business. So
Okay. And what are the characteristics you're looking for, right? So you're scrubbing through the MLS or, your team or your agents and brokers. I'm assuming you're effectively giving them like, hey, these properties need to meet this criteria for
yeah,
them to be candidates. What are those criteria for you?
yeah. So we don't buy anything in a flood zone. Wetlands has to be very nominal. We've looked at river properties, but not really then you're in a flood zone. I'm really not a big fan of it. We can get into the why later in terms of the marketing and who our end buyer is. Then on top of that, the terrain needs to be flat or undulating enough where it's workable, especially at the road front. We need to have water. We need to have power. Sewer's not really that common where we work, so
Hmm.
really it's mostly septics. So either it needs to perk or it needs to be soiled where it's good. And then as far as, do we have it cleared or not cleared, we're willing to buy both treed or untreed properties. A lot of stuff that we buy is either timbered or it's been cut or thinned. And so we're just, dicing up the properties that way. It's got to have probably the most important thing, it's got to have good road frontage. We want to be able to dice it up into at least 5 lots. We try to stick between 5 and 10 lots, on each project. So we got to have enough road frontage where we can make really nice properties. I don't want to have weird shaped properties. We're
Yeah.
creating, a legacy. This property is now changing forever. It's now going to be a home, likely in the future, and that's unlikely to change again for a very, very long time. So we want to make sure the lots actually are functional and usable, especially for the people that want to put a home on there. It's like we want to make sure that this home's going to be able to be there and you're going to have land that's actually going to be workable at the end of the day. So, yeah, short of that, there's some other things that we go into, but those are our main like breakpoints, and we use Land ID primarily to do the high level research. Once we get the APN number, address, if it does have one assigned, pulling it up in Land ID to look at those things. One last thing I'm thinking about is the transmission lines. That's a huge deal. So we
Mm.
also look at transmission lines. I don't like buying property with transmission lines on or near the property. Um, if it's going to be near it, it's got to be at least a couple parcels away and not be viewable. Otherwise, it's probably a no for me.
Wow. Okay. So everything checks the box there. How many do you usually sort through before you find one that you're like, I'm going to make an offer on it?
Yeah, it varies. I would say we look through hundreds before we find one that works in all ways, and we negotiate it to a point where the numbers make sense.
Hmm.
So, if you're like comparing this to mailing or some other sort of marketing strategy, you're sending out thousands of letters or thousands of phone calls, like it's the same thing. We're looking through thousands of properties before we hit the one that makes sense. At any given time, we have 3 to 5 properties in our interesting list. And once we get through the interesting list and we like, okay, we've got 5 here, let's start with one and we'll go down to 2 and 3, 4, 5. Sometimes we get down to the fifth one and it's already sold.
Yeah.
So this happens over and over. So we don't have like a repertoire of like we're buying every month. It's like every quarter we want to acquire new projects. And the main thing is there's a lot of 0 point failures. So I learned this term. There was a documentary done about the James Webb Telescope.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that worked on that project to basically not replace, but just be an enhanced version of the Hubble telescope. And Hubble had a great career, and now we have the James Webb telescope. The James Webb telescope took a good 20, I want to say 20, 30 years, something like that. It was a very long span
Jeez.
to get this project up and running and put it in place where it's now able to bring in these images of the universe. And this entire project took that many years and thousands of people working on the project. And there were about 1,000 to 2,000, like maybe even more than that, 0 point failures, where if anything went wrong at that point, the whole project would blow up and it was done. And they somehow made it through all of these steps, and now it's bringing these amazing images. So if you haven't seen the James Webb Telescope images, I mean, it's breathtaking. So I love that term because when it comes to these projects, there's a ton of things where we get to this and it's done.
Right.
So like to say like you look at a bunch of land and you're going to find one every day is it's unlikely to happen.
Yeah, and that's a the way that we put that in my business is we're always trying to kill the deal as fast as possible. We want to kill the deal as fast as possible, meaning we want to find that 0 point failure as soon as possible. So our process behind underwriting, all that stuff is lined out in such a specific way where we know where we are most likely to encounter those 0 point failures so that we can move through the leads as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of efficiency to build around that.
Yeah, 100%. So we try to do that as much on the front end. Then we get through our diligence, we go through our checklist. And then once we get through that, then we're talking about numbers. And to kind of back up for a second, we have our first phase of diligence. Then we're looking at comps and underwriting the parcel itself. We're underwriting what are the parcels going to look like in terms of, shape and what's the value going to be of those parcels. Not really adding value. At this point, we're not putting roads in, we're not doing anything. It's just chopping it up on the lot line at the road. And so we need to know, okay, if we got a 30-acre parcel here and we're going to do 6 parcels and here's the sizes, okay, what's the as is value? Is it fair what we're paying? A, but B, what's the value of those child parcels? We have the parent parcel value, we have the child parcel values. And so we need to make sure we've actually got a deal here roughly at the number they're asking, right? So if they're asking a certain price, then I got to look at that price and say, okay, I'm going to negotiate still,
Yeah.
but is it within the range of what we're willing to pay?
Right.
If it isn't, then it's not going to work. If the number's there, then we go on to our next phase. We get our diligence done, and then we're off to the races with an offer. And our offer is kind of roughly like if we took a property, I don't really care how long it's been sitting, although that does tend to help. If it's been sitting a while, maybe we can negotiate more. That doesn't necessarily translate. If it's
Hmm.
been sitting for 300 days versus one day, the motivation may or may not be there to move the needle very much. Okay, so that's something that's different from off market. Like it's been sitting a while and they're like, oh, we've already tried, so we're willing to take 50%, 60%. It doesn't translate that way. But generally, if it's been sitting longer, it means they've been through enough offers, they've seen what people are willing to pay, and they're like, okay, you know what, this is actually a pretty decent offer. So we're usually 10 to 30% off of what they're asking.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question. I was like, how far are you able to get them down off that price? I mean,
Yeah.
even just internally, when we receive cash offers, it's not uncommon for us to go 10, 15, even 20% down our initial asking price. So that aligns up with about what I assumed.
Mhm.
And are you looking to make a specific return
Yeah.
percentage, or what are you looking for there?
Yeah, we're looking for 100% net return on invested capital. So our CapEx, I think that's the lingo that people
Yep.
use. So basically, what we're looking at is purchase price, closing costs, survey. If we're doing perk tests, that's in there. We got drone footage if we're in there. I bring that up because it can be a little more pricey. We can be anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 for drone footage, depending
Hmm.
on scope of the project. So it is a bigger ticket item. It's not just a couple $100s on these bigger ones.
Yep.
So we put those together and we have to get to our price. And then we like to have our 100% net based off of the conservative valuation. although we may try to shoot the numbers a little bit higher and shoot for something higher. We know we're going to end up coming down eventually if they don't move at that price. So we're looking at the 100% number based off of the conservative value return of those child parcels at the end of the day.
And is that conservative value usually around like 80% of what you list?
Yeah, so what we try to list at about 115, 120% what we think,
Okay.
and we end up coming down usually around 100 to 90% of whatever, the value is. So to give you some example, let's say the value we pay all in is 2,000 and we're shooting for 4, we may list for 5.
Yeah.
And then we may sell, on average, because every parcel sells for a different price, we're going to average it around 4,000 an acre. Maybe some sold for 5, maybe some sold for 38, maybe some sold for 45. Like it just all averages out. So it's like, we would love for them all to be the same price. And that's the other thing. Some of them we end up pricing it differently because if it's larger, we're going to sell it at a lower price per
Yep.
acre. If it's smaller, we're going to sell it at a higher price per acre. So when you average the numbers together, that's what we're really looking at the end of the day.
Right. And so you're looking to double, all your money. That's perfect. That's usually what people are looking for. And then what's a timeline that you usually try to stick within on your deals? And then after this, we're going to go attack a real deal and you can walk us through how it actually panned out.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as like timeline to like close or timeline to sell through,
So
like,
full cycle the deal. You closed on the acquisition side, surveyed, cut it up, did your perk tests, marketed it, and then sold out your last child parcel. What's that timeline?
yeah. So we try to buy everything and have all the surveys and all the lots ready to go on day one of closing. So that can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 90 days. We've had one that's taken 12 months to get to the closing table. We could get into that one. That one was a
Yeah.
bit of a nightmare. So it's just a matter of is the title work clean? So when you're going through that step, okay, we got a contract, then we got earnest money, then we got to get title work done. Once title work is done, then we get the survey done. Once we get the survey done, maybe if you're in an area where you need to do the soils test before the survey, we do that soil test.
Mm-hmm.
Then we do the survey. Then we have the drone footage, usually done shortly after or at the same time as the drone footage, because
Mm-hmm.
we try to include that in the closing costs if we can. And then after that, we close. So that's a couple weeks. That's the shortest timeline I've ever had to a year
Yeah.
uh, because title work was completely messed up. And this is on market stuff. Just
Yeah.
because it's on market doesn't mean the people know what they're doing. It's the same
Right.
off market stuff. So just keep that in mind. And then, sell-through rate can be anywhere from 90 days to a year and a half. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
just depends on the scope of the project. I would say what has helped us tremendously in our market is understanding our end buyer. And now that we know who our end buyer is and the type of product we're creating, because at the end of the day, we're subdividing. We're not just going out and finding some random parcel and throwing it up on the market with some good marketing, right? We're buying a parcel, we're splitting it up, we're creating new widgets, we're creating new products to bring to the market, and there's a different buyer for each of those products. So the thing that has helped us speed up our sell-through rate is having financing products lined up that match the needs of the buyer. And the thing that has helped us tremendously is working with manufactured home buyers, people that are like,
Oh
I need
wow.
land and I want to put a manufactured home here, and I've got FHA or USDA financing or VA financing. There's also conventional financing. So there's like 3 or 4 different routes they can go for land plus construction, but the land plus construction is not a house, it's a manufactured home. And so by being able to get the financing all wrapped into one, they can be as little as like 1,000 into the deal on the down payment, or as little as like 3.5 to 10% down. Depends on their credit score. Because with
Mm-hmm.
FHA, that's our biggest base of buyers with manufactured housing. You're 3.5% down, 580 credit score, or with 10% down, they can be at 500 credit score. So, credit's really a non-issue. It's just a matter of having the down payment. And the average home we're looking at with the land is usually about 150 to 200,000. That's about the range of these manufactured homes. Clayton Homes, that's our main, house that people go with. But we work with dealers, and the dealers put all this stuff together. So it seems overwhelming for a land person, but really it's just a matter of we get the land and we're connecting buyers with all the people that they need to work with. And really, it's only one other company, it's a dealer
Yeah.
Dealer does the financing, they do the home setup, they put the home in, and they wrap it all up, and they give us cash at the end of the day for the closing. So it works out great for us. And that now is about not even eight, I'd say 9 out of 10 buyers. That's like literally 9 out of 10 buyers right now.
Wow, that's
Is
crazy.
using financing with FHA and working with these dealers or working directly with the, homemaker. Like, so it's a little bit more convoluted. Like with manufactured homes, you can go one of like two or three different routes. You can get your own bank financing
Hmm.
somewhere else and then go to a manufactured home place and they'll do the setup and home, and then you come to us for land. That doesn't happen very often. What happens is the manufactured home dealer does the financing, the home setup, the home, and they come to us and say, "Hey, we got a buyer that wants land. What do you got?" Or we go the other way, they find our land and they're like, "Okay, let's go this way. You guys take care of the financing, home setup, and home." And that's usually it's very reciprocal. So we send buyers their way and they send buyers our way to make the deal happen because without land, they can't do the homes, and without the
Yeah.
home, they can't do the land.
No,
So
that's brilliant. Because I've heard we've considered trying to sell our land to Clayton Homes in the past, and they're just kind of a pain in the ass as far as acquiring land directly. But that's ingenious to just have like a sort of a referral network. And how does that affect your marketing, right? So are you incorporating like the double wide manufactured home into your marketing when you're selling these lots?
not really. What we do is we just t make sure that the buyers know in the marketing that it's manufactured home friendly. And
Hmm.
I say manufactured housing because a lot of people mix up mobile home and manufactured home. Mobile
Yeah.
home is something from 1985 or before. A manufactured home is something after 1985, and that is all the brand new stuff. And a lot of people give them a bad rap, but I will tell you these things are like they're really nice. So if you
Yeah,
haven't
they've
been to
gone
one,
way up in like how quality they are. I've worked on older mobile homes. I actually grew up in an old mobile home. But yeah, what's coming out off the assembly lines now is much higher value.
oh yeah, and quality too. I
Hmm.
mean, it's just as bougie as walking into a brand new home. So, I mean, that's the main thing. People get that stigma, but once they get on the lot with Clayton, I would say Clayton is not a good fit as far as trying to do a spec home, which is what you're kind of describing.
Yeah.
They're better fit for, hey, we have buyers looking for land to put our homes on. And so that's our partnership with Clayton is just bringing them the buyers that are looking to put these homes on the land that we have.
Hmm.
Um, and then vice versa, if they have buyers that have a home they have picked out and they don't have the land, then they send them our way because they're like, we know these guys. We've done business with them. They are doing everything above board and we love the way they operate. So whether it's Clayton, there's about 50 different companies out there. Clayton just happens to be the largest in the country. It's a Berkshire Hathaway company. So they've got offices everywhere and they are
Yeah.
very efficient, but it's not the only one. So we work with Clayton and these other ones directly, but we also work with regional, like conglomerates. They're like, well, we got like 8 offices in this area of the state, and we have every manufactured home that you can imagine, plus repos. They'll do repossessions, they'll do things like that. So they've got all kinds of options for people, and they do all of the work as far as, setup, financing, and the home, based off the person's budget. So it just depends on who they're comfortable with. They want to go directly to Clayton. They want to go use a dealer. They want to get their own financing, use a dealer, and find us for the land. Like it just depends on how sophisticated they are in setting that up. So
And how
everybody's different.
was it difficult to establish that relationship with Clayton Homes, or do you have like a single rep that you worked with, or how did you go about establishing this relationship?
Yeah, you just call them and say, this is what we do. We're in land. We're looking for someone that can bring us buyers for our land and have a reciprocal relationship where you guys can get a buyer and we get a buyer. And you just have to call up the office. What happens with Clayton and these other companies is they work a certain territory. So if you're all over the place in terms of you got stuff in every state or you got in multiple states, you're gonna have to build a or build a reputation with that, local office with each one,
Hmm.
right? But if you're in one state or you're in one area, then you're just going to contact one and you're going to build that relationship over and over with that one, place. And then once they get to know you, they're going to start referring you to other people. I mean, it just kind of spreads your network very quickly. So we work very closely in the areas that we work. So we don't have to like constantly farm out new places. Like we've got 4 or 5 that we work with, and those are
Mm-hmm.
the 4 or 5 we refer people to. And it just depends on like they say, hey, I want Clayton. They name it by name. Like, okay, great. If they're like, I don't know, then we have a couple that are like they'll do full service. And they have every budget that you can imagine from like rolling
Wow.
repos and where I said 150, 200,
Uh-huh.
maybe in a repo it's a little bit less, right? They're like, no, I want the warranties. I want everything brand new. Okay, great. Then here's who you can go to. So we've got 4 or 5, and they usually work within a certain part of the state. They don't work the whole state.
Mm-hmm.
Clayton tends to have like one rep that will work either a portion of the state or the entire state. So it just depends on how popular it is. And then these other, regional dealers, they usually work like we do these 10 counties or we work this third of the state or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have someone set up for each part of the states that we're in so that we have coverage no matter where they are.
Awesome. Well, let's get into one specifically, and don't pick the best one or the worst one. Give me like a middling example of one that you've done, I guess, in the past year, and just kind of walk us through it, just like we outlined.
Yeah. So we'll do one that's middle ground and then we can do one that's extreme. I'll do the one that we were talking about earlier, that took 12 months to close. A lot of stories in that one, but this one's a pretty average one. We took a 22-acre parcel. It was advertised as 21 acres. And we thought we had 22 acres when it was all said and done. We ended up with 21 and change because there was a fence.
Mm.
So I don't know if you ever run into this slogan, but like when you buy a property and you get a survey done, I have yet to find a single survey where it's 100% what the county or whatever they think
Oh
that is.
yeah, no, it's always off. Sometimes it's wildly off. We had a survey recently where there was like 30 acres. And then I had another one where there was like a 10-acre difference. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I've had that same experience. So this one was nominal, but the whole reason why was just because there was a fence. So the parcel was kind of like a triangle. It's kind of like this, like triangle trapezoid sort of shape. And we originally did 10 parcels on it. And they did the boundary survey. So if you don't know what you're doing, you got to get a boundary survey, a meets and bounds survey. So they did that. And that's when they brought to our attention, they're like, hey, wait a minute, there's a problem here. We have one of two ways we can do this. We can call the neighbor and we can put you guys in touch and y'all can figure out what the deal is with the fence.
Right.
Or you guys can just move the lot line to the fence. And that's what we ended up doing because it was like zero point 0.4, zero point 0.5. It was like a half acre, something like that. And it was like, well, that sucks. We're losing a half an acre and I'm doing the math. It wasn't worth it at the end of the day to mess with it because moving the fence, they're like, first off, the fence has been there for 75 years. So it's leaning, it's a tall 12-foot fence. It's supposed to keep wildlife out, I guess. I don't know exactly why it's 12 feet, but I was like, well, we could move the fence. Well, how much does it cost to move the fence? Oh, that's going to be at least $10,000.
Oh yeah, easy.
And so we looked at it like, well, the acreage is even worth that. I mean, we're talking maybe half that
Yeah.
for a half acre. So we just said, you know what, we're going to move the boundary line. And at some point in the future, when you try to sell yours and you try to do a boundary, if you ever sell, you've got a half acre that you've now gotten just because we've defaulted to the line there.
Bonus
And
acreage.
they could, because they could claim, the way it would work is adverse possession, I guess. I mean, we
Yep.
just gave it up. But really, at the end of the day, there's this sliver now that until they resurvey out the lines, it's just going to be like this void that isn't known. And so I'm looking forward to watching the GIS getting updated so I can see what happens. They like just move it over, or do they just leave this little gap that's like it's a weird shape. It's like an oval
I bet they
shape.
don't even change it. I bet they just leave it.
I bet they do. Yeah, I bet you they do. So anyway, we lost this little half acre, and on the survey they show the fence line, so that's nice. They have that on there, and then they split it up into 10 lots. And this was a project where we thought wells would be perfectly fine. Wrong. Now, we don't buy anything without water,
Yeah.
period. It's got to have water lines and it's got to have water taps at the lot line that can be tapped into, not water that's coming through, but you can't use it. Like you got to have water lines at the property boundary and you have to be able to tap into it. So we learned that kind of the hard way. We ended up having, instead of having 10 buyers, we ended up having 5 buyers. So it kind of averaged each buyer bought two lots. One of the buyers bought one bought three, and then the other bought two. So it kind of averaged out to two apiece. We had three mobile homes, so three manufactured homes go in, and we had two brothers that wanted to do stick builds. So all of it was going to become residential. The total acreage on each one, it kind of averaged out. We had some that were in the 1 to 2 acre range, some that were in the 3 to 5 acre range. And because they bought double, you just double that on each one. So we ended up buying all in for 2050 an acre. That's what the cost of the survey, the cost of purchasing it, closing costs, drone footage. And then when we sold it for a total of $4,000 an acre. And that averaged out. We had a few that sold for 45, a few that sold for 42, a few that sold for 35. So we did the math because I was like, I want to know what we actually ended up with, and that one was 4,000 on the dot. So we were just shy of 100%. And that one did take a little bit longer. It took us about 16 months to finish, because the water thing just kept up over and over and over. It was just a constant problem. So we're like, in the future, we're going to definitely either have water or we're going to price it at a point where the well issue is an issue. And I'll bring this up when you're talking, this is bringing back to the manufactured home conversation. Like when you're putting stuff in, the 150 to 200,000 for the home. Home's going to be 100, 125. Then you got the land. Land's going to be 10 to 30. Okay. The other is the installation cost. You got the pad, you got the water, you got the
Septic.
sewer, and you got so power, water, and septic. That's basically the three main ones, and then maybe gas, propane, something like that. But to connect into sewer, 5 to 10, water, 5 to 10. If it's a well, could be 5 to 10, could be 50.
Yeah, you don't know. They don't know either
Don't know.
sometimes.
They don't know either. And so they can go do a test, but that doesn't really tell them a whole lot about how far they're gonna have to drill, which you can drill and drill and drill and still pay the bill and not have any water. So that was our big learning lesson on that one. It's like if we could have water and it's accessible, now your manufactured home buyer is going to be at ease, and the bank's going to be at ease, and the dealer's going to be at ease.
Yep.
Everyone's going to be at ease that this land is going to have a mobile home, manufactured home on there within a few weeks of closing. And that's how quick it goes. When they do put these in, like we close, and within a week to a month, that's usually how long it takes, and the home is already in.
Wow, that's a crazy
So
turnaround. So cash on. So you were all in. You said at 2,000 an acre,
just
or
just a little
sorry.
bit, just a little bit about 2,050 an acre, and then we
Okay.
sold for 4,000 an acre.
Okay. So yeah, it's not a bad deal.
Yeah. So, and that was 16 months to from start to finish. And the start is literally on day one. So that's something that's a little bit different. Some people, I'm not sure exactly how you've done them before, Logan, but when we buy, we get the surveys done, we get the approvals done, all of it's done before we close. So literally on day one, we close. Day one, we're also on the market.
That's
So
wild. Have you ever encountered an issue where the property was not able to change hands on that closing date?
yeah, we've had to push the closing date, but it wasn't because of us, because we've had issues with title work. So the title work's the biggest one, or
Yeah.
getting the survey scheduled. Sometimes the schedule just doesn't work out and takes longer. But we make it contingent, all of our sales, because you're working, it's a little bit different. When you're working off market, you got your own contracts. Maybe you've got an attorney involved that's working with both, but it's different, right? They're wanting the cash, they want to close quickly. Maybe they are, maybe you're trying to negotiate something where you can get everything done beforehand. But on the MLS, you got realtors involved. And you can make, just like you can on off market, make contingencies. We just make it contingent on the fact that we have to have all approvals
Hmm.
for our surveys done before we close, period. And most of the stuff we're doing is exempt anyway. The stuff that's minor, it's a minor approval that we usually get done. It's like two steps. We're going to say, here's what we're going to do. Then we submit it. Here's what we did. They stamp it. And once they stamp it, then we're off to the races with closing. But we do make our properties, all purchases are contingent on that closing being approved by whatever needs to be done. Whether it's exempt or it's not, it has to be done before we close. So, they just have to sit tight. And sometimes that's a quick wait. Sometimes it's a longer wait. Sometimes that's a
Yeah.
60-day wait. Sometimes, we don't haven't gone that much further for our part. 60 days is about the most we've ever had to do, maybe 90 days at most. Most of them are 30 days to 45 days to get everything completed. If there's title work issues, that's completely out of our realm of, being able to control
Yeah,
what's
there's
going
not much you
on.
can do. You have to lean on your attorneys, your title company to resolve all that for you. Yeah, been there, man.
So we could go into that deal if you would like, or yeah,
Yeah, we
seems like
have we have maybe 5, 10 more minutes. So what do you want to do? You want to get into that, or you want to talk more about marketing? I know you said the marketing is very important in the way that your projects close out. So what do you think?
yeah, we can do marketing.
Okay.
Um, Run with it. What do you want to know?
So, I mean, when you're putting these plans together, now that you've done so many, I'm guessing you have like just clear understanding of the full cycle, right? I mean, there's always hiccups. You're always learning a little bit on each deal. But when you're buying these, you said you know who your end buyers are, which is now these manufactured homes, right?
Yeah.
So, what are you doing specifically to draw in that crowd, to market to them? What are you doing there?
Yeah, so the main thing I would say is we're just providing superior marketing. Every property we don't do video, but we do have video clips. So we do try to get video and pictures, and we'll use the video for TikTok and other things like
Hmm.
that. We get really good pictures, and we do the drone outlines. We do a informational packet on the subdivision. We name every subdivision. It's always fun naming them. Bryce loves working on them. That's his thing. Every time we get a new one, he's like, what are we going to call this one? So we have a nice looking packet that's very professional we put together. We also have a financing packet that we put together for all the different options that people have to get their financing. By the way, we don't even mention owner financing in
Yeah.
them. It's all the bank's options, right? And then the other thing is in our marketing, we just talk about the ability to, and we try to buy stuff with no zoning or the
Hmm.
ability to do these manufactured homes. And so we make sure that's really, really in front of them because if you don't make that evident, that's the first question they always ask. And it feels like no matter where you go in the country with the stuff that's not, one, two, $300,000, but the stuff that's below 100,000, that's the first question they ask. So we try to put it within the first viewing glance of the ad copy. This is mobile home friendly, manufactured home friendly. And so we make sure they know that's there. Then on top of that, when they come in the door, this is more on the sales side, we let them know in the first interaction, hey, you can get manufactured homes on this lot and we can line you up with the financing for it. As soon as that happens, they're like, well, tell me more. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, really, like you're doing a lot of things there, which are very important because it's all about one of the most important things you can do when you're selling land is establish credibility early.
Hmm.
So if you have a name and good like strong marketing materials, packets that people can actually like, what digital or not, take with them and pass along. I mean, all those things do a lot to lend credibility to the entire transaction. And I found that people just treat you differently. From the beginning interactions to their negotiation tactics on down the road. So that's really smart, and it's something that a lot of folks don't think about, especially if maybe they're doing their first subdivision or they're kind of stuck in that flipper mentality where, like you said, if you're just flipping land kind of all over the country or all over your state or whatever, all your marketing materials really just like some drone footage and some ad copy that ChatGPT wrote for you. So all this stuff does a lot to lend credibility and make that transaction probably more smooth, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and we get compliments like, "Oh, this looks amazing." Like, are you guys a Fortune 500? No, we're not. Just we have Adobe. We have a fantastic way to put them together. And the other thing we do with those packets is we have a design. So we take the lot design of the parent tract, put it on the parcel, I know the child parcels on there, and we make it all like a shape.
Uh-huh.
So they get to see the property, they get to see all the different lots that are available in the subdivision, whether it's three or four or it's 10. And we try to be below 10 on most of them, but as far as that, we just try to put 4 or 5 pages together with information that most people don't get. Even just contacting a broker, we're very
Hmm.
different because our broker is worried about his liability. Oh, if I tell him we have this and we don't, that's on them, right? I'm like,
Right.
I want to be sure they know everything about the property. I'm like, do your due diligence. I'm going to share all this information. and I want you to contact all these different places. If you want to know about how water works or how power works or how sewer works, here's who you call. But at the end of the day, if they have the information, you're way ahead of everyone else because if you put out a listing and say it's 5 acres, it's in this place, and contact me if you have questions, you're just going to be sitting there answering questions all day, or most people are just going to get frustrated and move on. So when they come
Yeah.
to our listings, they're getting all the information they wanted. So the only questions they're really asking us when they come in the door now is, how do I get financing? How do you do a purchase? What's the title company? Or asking a very specific question that's not answered in the, listing, like, hey, can I have chickens?
Right.
Sure, you can have chickens. Here's who you call. You can call Bob and he can talk to you about chickens. There's no zoning. He's the, zoning officer. He can talk to you about chickens. Like, we don't put that in the ad copy. That's too specific of a question, but things like that. That's what comes in the door, not where's the address? What's the situation with water? It's like that's already there. You got all that information available, so you already know what it's got.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, the more that you can like, I do like to answer like one or two initial questions. So in a lot of my advertising, I will say I'm doing something like Facebook Marketplace. I won't answer all the questions in the initial listing because I do
Mhm.
like to answer one or two and have just a little bit of engagement. But then having something that you can send over with your branding and all that stuff is very important. So I mean that's huge. I mean even on our subdivisions now, if we do because we mostly do larger subdivisions, they'll have their own website. So
Yeah.
all of it, anything you can do to look more professional is a huge benefit to you. But just to wrap things up here, I wanted to get your feeling. I've been asking everybody, like, what's your pulse on the state of the economy? Where do you think the land industry is going? If you could sum that up in just a few minutes, I'd be interested for your take on how things are looking for you today.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. I swing between being pessimistic and optimistic by the day, and it just seems like that's just the way it goes with our current leadership. But you can't let what's happening in the economy affect your business. Your business either works in this economy or any economy, or it doesn't. And so we just try to focus on the fundamentals of buying good land in good locations with a good fin. This is the piece that a lot of people don't have is a good financing product, not hoping some note buyer is going to buy it from you, but an actual financing product backed by a financial institution that's backed by the New York Stock Exchange. Like, what a concept. So we try to make sure that our product has something that will align with that and that will work whether the economy is up or down because our buyers don't care what's happening in Wall Street. They don't care what's happening in Washington. They care about, do you have something that I can afford and I can move into? Because the product that we're selling is an upgrade from renting. It's an upgrade from living in a trailer park. It's just something very different. So that's just my overall vibe. Now, as far as like, am I pessimistic or optimistic about the overall economy? I think it's definitely in a situation where we need to keep our thumb on it and need to be more conservative in terms of what we're buying. But I keep my money on the mark of what we're trying to do, which is just provide, our mission is to democratize land ownership. That's kind of our motto at DeBrose Land, but it's just a matter of picking products that match no matter what the economy is doing. And that wasn't always the case. Like in the last few years, we've been in the business since 2017, and it was always just like, where can we get the next land flip? And it could have been out in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, or it could have been out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. I'm like, the problem is you don't know what the economy is going to do. When the economy tanks, no one needs to buy the luxury product out in the middle of nowhere. What they need is housing.
Right.
And so I'm like, that's what we focused on, and not luxury, affordable housing.
Affordable housing. Yeah, there's always going to be opportunity in affordable housing because worst case scenario is somebody who might have been buying at a higher price point is now going to try to buy at a lower price point, but people are always going to need places to live. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So I do feel it for the folks that are in the markets where their entire market is land, builders or lot builders or people that are buying bigger tracts and all they have is, these big conglomerates that are like, wait, we're pumping the brakes on our acquisitions because we see big issues in the economy and they're selling five, 600,000, $700,000 homes. I'm like, the problem is like Colorado, that would be a pretty average home. So they're still buying, they're still building here.
Yep.
But you look at places like Austin, Texas, maybe you could talk a little bit about Dallas, but I've heard things about Austin being an issue. I've heard things about Florida being an issue because they've got way more supply than they do demand, and the prices have gone so far up that the average person in that local economy can't buy. I do keep my thumb on those things because those indicators are issues.
Hmm.
And I'm glad I'm not in those markets, but it's like those sort of things are happening across the country, and they're gonna eventually affect us all in some way, shape, or form. So it's like it's very important to keep your thumb on it. But to answer your question directly, like I can't say if it's good or bad. It's just something you got to keep an eye on and just be aware of it as you're doing your business from day to day.
Stay nimble out there, folks. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
Um, cool. So, I mean, you're all over. How can people reach out to you, get in touch with you? What are your preferred channels there?
Yeah, you can reach out on Facebook. You can reach out on email. Happy to drop my email down below. And people can reach out. My email is seth@debrosland.com. Our website's debrosland.com. And then my Facebook is just my name, Seth Drehle-Ewan. So sure you can drop them down in the show notes
Yes,
for both.
sir. Will do. Awesome. Well, Seth, I really appreciate your time. You've been a fountain of knowledge, and I'm sure you're gonna have some folks asking you questions. And I'll also, if you have any of your projects, just imagery that you want me to post alongside with this, that'd be really cool as well.
Yep.
Folks, say thank you to you, Seth Drehle-Ewan. Thank you for being with us today. We really enjoyed you. We look forward to having you again on the next one. All right.
Thanks, Logan.
All right. Cheers.